Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? Join me in singing the pledge, or not singing, sorry, saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Honor! No! Close colors! Honor guard! Dismiss!
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for attending the Washington County Fair military ceremony celebrating our modern warriors, those veterans post-Vietnam War. Thank you to Joseph Goodmanson on the bagpipes and the Washington County Sheriff's Office Color Guard, and to Candace Washburn for the national anthem and the Pledge of Allegiance. We'd like to welcome and recognize some of our elected officials: County Commissioner Victor Iverson, County Commissioner Adam Snow, Hurricane City Mayor Nanette Billings, and St. George City Councilman Steve Kemp. And if I've missed anybody else, I think that's everyone. All right. Next up, we are pleased to hear from David Cordero. David is our Communications and Marketing Director for the City of St. George, as well as Chairman of the Veterans Coalition of Southern Utah. David has been a published writer for more than 20 years and always tries to do his best to convey his appreciation for our veterans. After David's remarks, we'll be pleased to hear from Tonal Eclipse, a quartet featuring Craig Herdman, Chris Leonard, Nate Holden, and Tim Scott. David.
Thank you, Ed. As we honor those who we refer to as modern warriors, it's useful to discuss some of the reasons why our nation's current and former military members decided to join the armed forces. Those reasons are vast and may include patriotism, earning money for college, wanting to travel the world, getting out of a poverty situation, seeking adventure, and a family tradition of serving. Of course, there are many, many more reasons, but since 1973, one reason has not been on the table, and that reason is because they had to. Had to, meaning they were drafted. The first conscripts to the U.S. military began serving during the Revolutionary War, and drafts have taken place through 6 conflicts spanning nearly 200 years. In some of those conflicts, the very existence of our nation was at stake, most recently during World War II. Even after Allied forces defeated the Axis powers, the threat of communism to the free world loomed large. So drafts continued through the Korean War, the Cold War, and the war in Vietnam. Most people would agree that the American military draft, though not always fair, was necessary given the threats to our national security. And don't forget, in that span, a significant number of those who volunteered to serve were motivated to do so because they felt the draft would eventually catch up with them. So why not at least try to get into the branch of service that was of their preference? 50 years ago, that all changed. Beginning in 1973, if you didn't want to serve in the military, you didn't have to serve in the military. The United States of America now had an all-volunteer force. The big question mark had to do with manpower. Would our military be able to attract enough volunteers to adequately protect our citizenry? The answer, a resounding yes. In the last 5 decades, more than 11 million Americans have served in the all-volunteer force. Today, more than 1.5 million men and women serve in uniform. It's been a win-win proposition. You serve our country, and while doing so, you learn skills and receive benefits that can last a lifetime. It has allowed people of lesser means, people like my father-in-law, who grew up poor in Detroit, but who enlisted in the Air Force at age 17 and served for 25 years, a path to achieve middle-class status. This new approach towards staffing our military faced its first real test in 1983 when President Ronald Reagan ordered a rescue of American citizens on the island nation of Grenada, caught in the midst of a bloody coup. Operation Urgent Fury was a military success, to be followed by other military operations throughout the years that many of you served in Kuwait, Iraq, Bosnia, Kosovo, and during the war on terrorism. Now take a moment to consider the wars not fought, likely numerous but impossible to substantiate. These are conflicts that have been avoided due to our military strength serving as a deterrent for our would-be foreign aggressors. I think we can all agree that this all-volunteer force has served us rather well. The sight of our modern warriors here today warms my heart. As someone who did not serve in the armed forces, but who has been protected by the greatest military force on the planet, I wish to say just one thing to you all. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Testing. Can you hear this? Okay. Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain. majesties. Above the fruited plain, America, America, God shed his grace on thee and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. Oh, beautiful for patriot dream that sees beyond the years. Thine alabaster cities gleam, undimmed by human tears. America, 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 God shed his grace on thee and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. America, America, America.
Please, one more round of applause for Tonal Eclipse. Craig Herdman, Chris Leonard, Nate Holden, and Tim Scott. That was awesome. I'd now like to introduce our keynote speaker. Coy Bryant enlisted in 1989 with the 2nd Battalion, 222nd Field Artillery, and in 1991 became active duty Utah National Guard. Bryant is a professional executive officer, lieutenant colonel, with 25 years of full-time experience leading, training, and supervising various organizations within the Utah Army National Guard. He has worked with the U.S. Embassy in Morocco to develop a national response framework, acquire required resources, develop and execute training plans, and build a comprehensive emergency response for their nation, including building agreements with neighboring countries to provide support and fill capability gaps. Bryant also served as Chief of Staff for 566 personnel in support of NATO Kosovo forces, where he formulated strategic plans, worked closely with U.S. embassies in Kosovo and Macedonia, and 32 nations' armed forces to achieve an environment that provides a safe and secure environment to enable the people to grow and prosper. In 2016, Bryant retired after 27 and a half years in the military. He currently works for Washington County Emergency Management. Please help me welcome Coy Bryant.
Well, I'd like to thank you all for coming out, because you're obviously not here just to hear me. It's your appreciation for the military, and that's what this is all about. Currently, the world is changing, but the mission of the military remains the same. It's constant: to deter war, protect the security of our nation, to deploy, fight, and win our nation's wars. Today is another opportunity for us to express our gratitude, our admiration, and show of support for the men and women in uniform and the veterans who previously answered this call to serve. Douglas MacArthur, in his speech to the Corps of Cadets in 1962, created the motto for West Point: duty, honor, and country. Those three hallowed words reverently dictate what you ought to be, what you can be, and what you will be. They are your rallying points to build courage when courage seems to fail, to regain faith when there seems to be little cause, to create hope when hope becomes forlorn. That became ingrained in the minds of soldiers. Those three words inspire on the battlefield, in family homes, communities, and with loved ones that made the ultimate sacrifice. I had the benefit of growing up in a military family. My father retired from the Air Force. I grew up in Okinawa, Japan for 5 years. We traveled in between Sacramento, San Antonio, and a good chunk of his time was spent in Utah. But that time, that grew my love and appreciation for the military. I had the benefit of growing up in a military family as we moved from one location to the other. But I learned we stopped our cars when they played reveille. We showed respect to the flag. We saluted when they played taps. We gave respect and the honors that they deserve. My goal was to become a fighter pilot in the Air Force. That was my lifelong dream. Unfortunately, I registered with the ROTC program at Utah State University, but when I took my commissioning physical, I didn't have good enough eyesight. So I was heartbroken. They offered me a missile command, but I didn't want to sit in a missile silo all day. That was just not what I wanted to do. So at that time, I thought that my military career was over. I was done. Several years later, when I was ready to graduate from school, I realized I had $19,000 in student loan debt. I figured out what my salary was, how much my student loan payment was, how much my car payment was, how much my rent was. I had no money after that. So that was a good driving force for me to join the Army National Guard so that they could get my student loans repaid. And that option is still available today. And I wish more people would take advantage of that instead of getting it handed out. Thanks from my dad and my friends that had already joined the National Guard. They were a big encouragement for me. I enlisted on 28 February 1989. My military career was as unique as you'll find. My status as a traditional National Guardsman, 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks a year for summer camp, annual training. They don't like you to call it summer camp anymore. And also as a civil service employee. I was an active guardsman from the rank of Sergeant E5 till I made Staff Sergeant, but I did that all in 2 years. That was unheard of to make that rank that fast. But it was more a situational than it was anything that I did. My dad encouraged me, if I was going to make a career out of it, that I was going to go to officer candidate school and take my commission and be a leader. So from second lieutenant, I spent time as a fire direction officer right here in St. George in B Battery. I was an executive officer in B Battery, 2nd to 222nd. I later became a battery commander for the 1st to 148 out of Logan, Utah, and also Brigham City. And then they called and asked me to go work for the Joint Task Force for the Olympic Security. I was one of the first 4 people brought on to make this big plan for the security of the Olympics. That was all pretty mundane until 9/11 happened. Everything changed. We no longer were using cell phones and commercial telephones. We all created secure telephones and secret skiffs and those kind of things. Later, I moved to Salt Lake and I started working with 1st Corps Artillery. 1st Corps Artillery works with 1st Corps out of Fort Lewis. Their operational assignment is the Pacific Theater. So every year they do an exercise in Japan called Yamasakura. Every year in South Korea, which Kim Jong-un just hates, Ulchi Focus Lens, they just finished that. We were involved in every single one of those. I became the planner for those exercises, so I spent 3 planning conferences a year in each of those countries, plus the exercise every year for about 10 years. And so I became a planner for targeting for all of the naval aircraft, for naval gunships, for artillery fire, for rockets, for missiles in those theaters. Later on, I became the overseas deployment officer, to where every exercise in the entire world that we had Utah National Guardsmen participating in, I had to travel there and coordinate all their logistics, where they were going to stay, what their training plan looked like, all those kind of things. So I had the opportunity to put my feet on 6 of the 7 continents. We don't do exercises in Antarctica, so that's the one I missed. But what I found traveling around is people are the same everywhere I went. They do things a little differently, but they have the same hopes and dreams that we have here. They want to build a better future for their kids. They want to have hope for better things for them in their country. And that's what it's all about. Unfortunately, I've witnessed a slow and steady degradation of that sense of patriotism. 9/11, there was a big boost, but over time it has degraded. And now, for some reason, I don't know why, being called a patriot is derogatory in the media. We've got to get that back. We've got to get back to the roots. So events like this is pointing us in the right direction. It's giving a pat on the back to the veterans, to recognizing them, thanking them. It's showing respect for our national anthem, honoring the flag, which is a beacon of hope and freedom. As a nation, we must remind ourselves of their sacrifices. Today, airmen, Marines, Navy, Coast Guardsmen, and now Space Force Guardians continue to demonstrate their willingness to stand and face the challenges of our nation and give back to this nation. They demonstrate a willingness to respond and ensure that freedom lives on. I appreciate everybody that's here. Thank you very much.
Deep within the heart has always known that there is freedom. Somehow breathed into the very soul of life. The prisoner, the powerless, the slave have always known it. There's just something that keeps reaching for the sky. And even life begins because a baby fights for freedom. And songs we love to sing have freedom's theme. Some have walked through fire and flood to find a place for freedom, and some face hell itself for freedom's dream. Let freedom ring wherever minds know what it means to be in chains. Let freedom ring wherever hearts know pain. Let freedom echo through the lonely streets where prisons have no key. We can be free and we can sing. Let freedom ring. God built freedom into every fiber of creation, and He meant for us to all be free and whole. But when my Lord bought freedom through the blood of His atonement, His life stamped pardon on my very soul. And now I'll sing it out with every breath. I'll let the whole world hear it. This hallelujah anthem of the free. Let freedom ring down through the ages from a hill called Calvary. Let freedom ring wherever hearts know pain. Let freedom echo through the lonely streets where prisons have no key. We can be free and we can see. Let freedom ring. We can be free and we can see. Let freedom ring. Let freedom
This is one of my favorite events of the entire fair week, and I've been privileged. This is now my third time as an elected official to be able to be here, and as the grandson of two World War II and Korean War officers, the son of a Vietnam veteran officer, I'm honored to be in your presence. And it is my honor to be able to read the proclamation supporting and honoring the post-Vietnam era American military veterans. Whereas, since 2020, Washington County, during the Washington County Fair, has honored military veterans by spotlighting veterans that have served in various eras and capacities. Washington County desires to express its gratitude, support, and to honor those military veterans who have served in the post-Vietnam era and up through the modern day. Since the mid-1970s, the United States has been involved in many military conflicts since the cessation of hostilities in Vietnam. And it has been more than 50 years since our last military draft, which means for over 5 decades, our military branches have been filled by a complete voluntary force. The United States has the greatest fighting force in the world because, year after year, citizens voluntarily serve and make sacrifices to ensure our freedom remains intact. As a county and members of this great country, we honor the selfless men and women who have served in the military in the post-Vietnam era. Washington County and its citizens recognize the bravery, dedication, and resilience required when serving in the armed forces. We further recognize that through military service, our veterans develop skills and traits that improve value to our communities long after they have been discharged. And their contributions to our communities following their service is critical and necessary for our society. Whereas Washington County recognizes the importance and often demanding burden that rests on the shoulders of military personnel, we gratefully and respectfully honor you and thank you for your service. Now therefore be it proclaimed by the County Commission of Washington County, Utah, that Washington County proclaimed its support for and honors those military men and women who have served in the post-Vietnam era. This was passed unanimously about an hour ago in our commission meeting. Thank you for your service and for being here.
Friends and veterans, on behalf of Washington County Commissioners and also all of our citizens of Washington County, we'd like to thank you. We'd also like to express thanks for the wonderful committee that puts this on every year. Susie Lafayette and Ed Tracy. I was thinking as Ed was singing up here, and he did a beautiful job. A lot of times I don't tell Ed how beautiful he is. But as he was up here and he just had this face that is so tan, I thought I should give him a hard time about going to the Bahamas and having a great vacation. But I know it's the countless hours that him and Susie and this incredible committee puts on this fair, and especially this celebration, which is our favorite part. Words do not properly express our gratitude, veterans, for your service. It's been said that for every veteran, thank you for bravely doing what you were called to do so we can safely do what we are free to do. And thank you so much. Where would America be without the 231,000 Revolutionary War veterans, or the 150,000 Mexican War veterans, or the 250,000 Spanish-American War veterans, or the 2.75 million veterans of the Civil War, the 4.7 million veterans of World War I, the 16 million veterans of World War II, 6.8 million served in Korea, 8.75 million served in Vietnam, and 1 million served in Iraq. Each served the country when their country called upon them. Abraham Lincoln said, "Any nation that does not honor its heroes will not long endure." And that is true. Coy alluded to this fact. Many of you may be aware or may not be aware that in the year 2026, just 2 short years from now, America will celebrate 250 years from the signing of our Declaration of Independence. And we look forward in Washington County to having an incredible celebration. We met just recently in Alabama. We were at a place called America's Village, which is established in that part of the area to celebrate America's history. And we met with one of the he's the co-chair of the 250-year celebration of America. And he said in some states there's kind of like a lackluster attitude towards celebrating. But here in Washington County, we will celebrate, and we'll have a great celebration indeed. Because America is worth celebrating. But where would America be without the veterans? Without the signing of the Declaration of Independence was only the beginning of what it took to bring forth this country. Next year, in April 19th, I believe, we'll celebrate 250 years of Lexington and Concord. And recently, in this same trip that I was telling you, I saw a reenactment of that. And I thought, what were those men thinking when they stood on those grounds in Lexington and Concord? When people who were not trained in military ways but answered the call of service, just as all of our veterans have done. I am the youngest son of a father who served in the South Pacific in World War II. I grew up in a time of peace. I was blessed with not having war during my time of enlistment. And so I thank all of you for everything that you've done, and I celebrate with you. As you go into the new county building on the east side, you'll see a statue of George Washington there on a horse. And that statue is depicting George Washington at the Battle of Princeton. And the statue is titled, Stand Your Ground. And at that moment was the testing of America when he was instructing his roughly trained patriots to stand against the most well-trained army in the world at that time. And he was telling them to stand their ground. And they stood their ground. And as I think of that statue, I think of each one of you, each one of the veterans that I'm looking at right now, and each one of you stood your ground when this country called for you. No matter where you served and no matter how you served, you stood your ground so that all of us can stand here today. So thank you so much, and God bless America, and God bless our veterans.
Before we close, I was asked to make a quick announcement. World War II Army veteran Cliff Spendlove passed away. He was 107. Service is Saturday, viewing is Friday for those of you who knew him, and even if you didn't, I'm sure he's worth celebrating. So someone here in the back, I think, Marty, you guys have info on that? Okay. Thank you all for attending. I hope you enjoyed yourselves. Please make sure you visit our Veteran Hall, Veteran Wall of Honor in the Harmony Building, directly behind you here, behind the bleachers. If you haven't seen that, it is a sight to behold. Every year we add new faces to that. It's an amazing sight. If you are one of our modern warriors, we ask you to please stop by the back table where the princesses are for your copy of the proclamation. Dismissed.